Linus Tech Tips coverage of CES 2014 is brought to you by NCIX.com, your source for great technology, selection, and service, along with Corsair Memory and Western Digital.
Hey guys, we're here at the Nurata booth with something that I almost walked right past. This is Mad Genius and their amazing, amazing controller. So what can you tell me about it?
What we have is a motion controller, except that it's based on absolute positioning, where most controllers are based on acceleration. And what this does is it lets us know where the player is in the room with an accuracy of 1/100th of an inch. And we can break the controller in half so we can track each of their hands independently, so that we can track things like if the player shoots a bow or does other things, we can track each side of it separately. And we can track that with the accuracy of 1/100th of an inch, which allows the player to aim with absolute precision and no sensor drift. We can get that last little bit when they zoom in on the target. We can see that motion. And the tracking is enough that we can tell the difference between if the player is breathing or if they're not. For some really tight shots, it's better to hold your breath, just like it is with an actual bow or an actual gun. It adds a different feel to the game because it becomes about how well can you aim, how well can you move. It's not just putting the crosshairs on something and pushing a button. The tracking is also optimized for an area about 8 feet wide, about 12 feet deep now. So the player can move anywhere in that area in front of the TV. And what we do is we link that to the character movement of the game, so as the player moves around, the character moves with them. So they can duck behind an object, literally step to the side to step out, shoot somebody, and then step back and hide again while they reload. And it adds a completely different feel to the game. If they need to move further, all of the sticks and buttons are still active, so we haven't removed any controls that they're used to. We just add the motion if they want it. And if they don't want the motion, they put the two halves back together, and they have a standard controller like they always have.
The two halves putting it back together and taking it apart, those are really easy to do because it's based on magnets. And something you told me earlier actually was because of how absolute the positioning is, actually you can tell because while you're holding it, there's a little bit of drift because your body is naturally moving in tiny amounts, and it's that accurate that if you put it down and point it at the screen, it will be exact, which is pretty interesting. Now, another thing we talked about when you brought up if you pulled it apart and went like this, you could be shooting a bow. You can make custom controls for this. So how would you go about doing that?
We have a motion editor, and you can pull that up and you can edit the motion design that we've done, or you can create your own, and that's how the motions for the controller can be customized to the game. And this is done without any hardware modification to the console and without any additional software in the console. So it can go back on any console and play existing games. It's backwards compatible with the games that are already out there because you don't need an additional software solution to make the game work. So we've gone as far back as PS1 games. I've done Gran Turismo on a PS1. And it works just fine with that. We've actually gone as far back as the original Castle Wolfenstein, which looks kind of clunky, blocky now, but you can link into anything. And you know, with a lot of the new motion controllers that are coming out, they have an API that the game developer needs to write to for it to work. And I wanted this to work right out of the box. So you can pull it out of the box, play the games you already have, and you know, in the future it would be great if game developers would write for it, but if not, you still have your entire library that you can play differently.
And I think that's really cool because there's a lot of technologies coming out lately, like Tobii eye tracking that we've seen, and Oculus, and all these other things that, while they're awesome, they require a lot of development on the game maker's side. And with all these technologies coming out, it's going to be hard for people to properly develop for everything that's available to them. So when a device like this comes out, and the hackers in the community can just come out and make their own profiles, upload them to the cloud, and allow you to download them yourselves, it's a lot easier for game makers because while if they want to, they can prepackage it, or they can add it later really easily, or if they have someone really enthusiastic in their community that they know is already going to make a really good profile, they can just rely on that, which is really cool. What's your favorite part about this device, or what is anything you feel like we've left out so far?
There's one thing that it's difficult to get through when you're watching it, but it's something that really happens when you play, is when you have that level of control. Something as simple as shifting your weight left and right and the character moves with you, there's a connection that makes with your brain. And everybody who does it the first time, there's this wow effect with it because you're like, oh, I'm connected into it. And it's little things like that that change the gaming experience. And so this isn't necessarily about counting milliseconds or a competitive advantage. It's about feeling a little more connected with the game.
This controller is awesome. There's a billion different things you can do with it. I'm really excited for how easily and seamlessly it integrates with games. They're going to be having a Kickstarter in a while. I think she said somewhere around April or February, but don't quote me on that. Go to their website, look up Mad Genius, you'll find it. And there's an input field for your email. If you put your email in there, they will email you when their Kickstarter is live. This is definitely something I'm going to be getting behind, as I love different ways of interacting with computers or consoles or whatever. If you can interact with it differently, I'm all over it. I was all over OCZ Nia, I was all over Oculus, all this kind of stuff, so I'm super excited for this device. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see all of our CES 2014 content, be sure to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips. And as always, thank you to our sponsors, NCIX, WD, and Corsair.